It's easy to blame James Franklin, and you'd be correct to put a lot of this on Franklin, but his coordinators, both of them, are just as much at fault.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That is right. You are locked on to Penn State football. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seyko, and I'm your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. And help me welcome back a very special guest to help me navigate some of these tougher subjects around the Nittany Lions right now. Matty Fresh. You know him as the artist, as Matty Fresh. Matt Freiler, artists behind the hit songs that are Penn State themed, like Trace McSorley, Jahan Dotson, and so many others, as we are going to talk about potential replacements if Penn State and James Franklin part ways, where things stand with Franklin and Penn State right now, because it's not even a guarantee that he's going to be gone, that he could be coaching in 2026 in Happy Valley, but who's most at fault for the issues with Penn State right now? Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Friendly reminder to let us know your thoughts down in the comments section. Be a part of the conversation. Matt, if you point the finger at James Franklin, you are correct, because it's his program. He's taken a lot of the responsibility. He's not throwing passive shade like in the past to a Mike Yurcich, for example. No, he's kind of taking a lot of the hits that would be going towards Andy Kotelnicki and Jim Knowles. He's saying, well, it all falls on me. Okay, that's fine. But you kind of had the right perspective that maybe Jim Knowles isn't everything that he's made out to be, and 42 points against UCLA is going to back up that statement there. But as we continue to look at things, the offense Jim Knowles had everything right up until the UCLA game. Andy Kotelnicki is kind of that next man in the rotation. If you want to move down from James Franklin, I think the coordinator or the coach that bears the next most responsibility is Andy Kotelnicki. What do you say?
You can point the finger in multiple directions here. I'm just sick over this. I'm sick over all of it. I think mostly I've been chirping Pac-12 fans ever since these couple of teams joined the Big Ten. You know, you'll never be as good as the traditional Big Ten powers. You'll never compete in this conference. I mean, we're 3-3 against those Pac-12 schools. So I don't know really.
And other than Washington, it's been close, right? That's an overtime game against USC. It's not like they won decisively.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, we can kind of go through it. I mean, I guess
give me your spiel on Jim Knowles there before we go back to Andy Kotelnicki, because Knowles, you said it right out of the gate that Knowles is not worth $3 million plus, and I push back on that, and clearly, at least right now, I'm wrong.
Yeah, and it's a bigger picture thing. I think a lot of us get caught up in, and we have to remind ourselves that the grass isn't always greener. It's very tough to learn this system. We're not playing fast. We're not playing aggressively, not flying to the ball like we used to. Don't have any linebacker depth after losing Tony Rojas. And Knowles is not adjusting to that. They were able to get, I believe, one stop. I mean, if outside of the block punt, they got one stop in that game, and it was because UCLA decided to hand Penn State the game on a silver platter by going for it on fourth down in their own territory.
Yeah, and they had it too. The guy fell down.
But for as good as the offense played in the second half coming back, you ultimately needed a stop that you couldn't get. I guess we took Abdul Carter for granted. Just not able to get to the quarterback time and time again. And yeah, I don't see much of an upgrade here at all from Manny Diaz, from Tom Allen, from whoever it was. I'm so sick over it, Zach, that it almost doesn't feel real. It almost feels like, you know, Ryan Day planted Jim Knowles inside of our program to screw up. Because how could you possibly look that bad against a team that you were 24.5 point favorites against, and obviously all the analytics and the numbers coming in favoring Penn State by so much. And it just makes you scratch your head and wonder, you know, this is why you can't just solve your problems by going to get the guy who beat you. That doesn't fix everything. And I know they thought it would, but sure, Jim Knowles was a good hire. Was he a $3.2 million hire? Absolutely not. Just like people will say now, James Franklin wasn't worth the $10 million we're paying him. Jim Knowles wasn't worth the 3.2. And frankly, it goes deeper than that. Some of these players who have regressed over their time, who, I mean, you could point to just about anybody, Zane Durant, Drew Aller, Nick Singleton, the guys who we expected to get better who have not. You paid them too much too. And I know hindsight's 2020, but looking back, there's too much money going around, not enough results, and now we're stuck in a position where the very guy that we need to move on from in order to get results cost us $56 million to do so. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it all, and it's pretty disgusting.
No, I think you bring up a lot of good points about Jim Knowles, Tony Rojas being the glue that holds the whole system together, and then it truly does fall back on James Franklin, because he was the one that pushed for the hiring of Jim Knowles, that, you know, hey, let's outbid Ohio State, let's outbid Oklahoma to get him here. It's one thing just to get him, but to say that we're going to make the offer so that he can't refuse. And then in the process, again, hindsight's 2020, but it seems like Zane Durant doesn't fit in this system at all. Deny Dennis Sutton, he's been good. Is he getting held from time to time? Sure, but he's not making as strong of an impact as I thought he would initially. Zariah Fisher's doing all right, but it's really, hey, the defensive tackles are not doing well. It was the Tony Rojas and Amari Campbell show. That was the dam that was getting ready to break when one of them got injured, and they did. The only group that's playing out of their minds, so to speak, and you wouldn't know it against UCLA, is the secondary. I would say the secondary is the best position group of the bunch, but that only carries so much weight when you're giving up 42 points to UCLA. Again, it was Tony Rojas that held it all together, because I thought Jim Knowles had an impressive performance, or just called as best of a game plan as he could against Oregon, and it's been the offense that's just been lagging. Let's pivot to Andy Kotelnicki here, because Nevada looked the best of the bunch. Okay, but that's not saying much. Then you really struggle against FIU, 10 points at halftime. Then you continue to struggle against an FCS team in Villanova. You have 3 points until you say, we got to light a fire under our seats to get going against Oregon. That's fine, but Kotelnicki, I do blame some personnel, guys not laying their blocks, Drew missing reads, guys missing receptions, and that limits your play calling. I get that. But you also got to be able to I look at the play where UCLA, on 4th and 2, where UCLA blew up the quarterback draw, counters, jet sweep to Trevor Pena. Guys missed their blocks, but why is Devontae Ross getting all this cushion, and you're not calling a quick slant, you're not calling a passing play, you're running the football with your 6'5" pocket passer on potentially the play of the season?
Yeah, and again, obviously, I get that.
Obviously.
I understand. Obviously, I understand, and I understand it starts with me. I get that. But no, Andy Kotelnicki, I mean, his offense reminds me of a race car driver who decides to floor it the entire race and then slam on the brakes right before they get to the finish line. I don't understand this.
I would say it's the reverse. I would say he's stuck at the start line, and then he hits the gas and tries to catch up.
Well, if you're looking at it in terms of scoring, yeah. I'm looking at it in terms of just pace of this offense.
I get what you're saying.
What pace they operate at.
Tempo.
And
the tempo.
Yeah, they want to fly. They want to fly down the field. Drew panics. Sometimes it results in a penalty. Sometimes it results in not being ready, not being set. And then when he gets in striking range, he wants to all of a sudden slam on the brakes. Again, these are bigger problems than just what happened on Saturday, but it did. It happened again on Saturday, where Penn State's flying down the field right before half. All of a sudden, they decide to slam on the brakes. Right at the end of the game, Penn State's flying down the field. They have UCLA where they want them. They start slowing down. They start slamming on the brakes. They start overthinking things. They're just not confident in anything that they're doing. And I guess Nick Singleton has a contract obligation where he has a quota that he has to reach a certain amount of carries per game, because it's unthinkable that Kaytron Allen's left off the field on the most important play of the game.
And apparently that's up to Andy Kotelnicki. I thought, why is Stan Drayton not being more intelligent about rotating the running backs or who to give the carries to? And apparently that actually is an Andy Kotelnicki decision. Why?
I mean, it's egregious to have Kaytron off the field there. All you got to do, and you and I both know, and anybody who covers this team knows, all you got to do is run the ball with Kaytron Allen there.
On
I mean,
fourth and two?
even if they stack the box, you know what? I'll go down swinging with him. And if he's an inch short, I wouldn't have been mad because I'd rather do that than whatever the hell
Yep.
that was that they ran at the end. And again, we're talking about a lot of moments in the game and things, but obviously this is all big picture stuff, Zach. Like I think ultimately, we're talking about whose fault is it, and what can you point to? It's just rat poison. I mean, Saban used to call this rat poison, and we're all guilty of it. We're all guilty of it. The Penn State media is guilty of it. The national media is guilty of it.
Sorry.
I'm guilty of it. Well, we all did. We all did it, and we've all owned up to it this week that we were wrong. And the kids, they heard this. That Franklin all the time with his classic block out the noise. It's not 2002 anymore. When he started code, you can't block out the noise. It's not possible. And look at this. Texas stinks. Clemson stinks. Penn State stinks. All the teams that everybody expected to do well ate the rat poison. It comes back to expectation. Taking 11-1 for granted, and taking certain peaks in the Franklin era for granted, thinking that we'd maybe get better than that or we could do better than that. The fact is, this guy's peaked already. He peaked in 2016, and then he peaked again, a little peak in 2024. It's never going to be better than that with James Franklin with those 2 seasons that we had. I don't care if he stays another 8 years till 2032. It's never getting better than what we had last year in 2016.
Well, there you have it. That's a perfect segue into where things actually stand with the head coach himself. So the coordinators bear responsibility. Obviously, James Franklin bears responsibility. So where do things stand with Franklin between job security, buyout, and where he'll be coaching in 2026 and beyond? It very well is likely to be Penn State, actually. We'll talk about it next year on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by SupplyHouse. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with SupplyHouse. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business are available. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting on projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Do you need parts fast for a project? SupplyHouse has next day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters, and their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet. Put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel gives you so many ways to play. You can build parlays, you can try player props, you can even follow the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. And whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. And yes, lines are available for Penn State versus Northwestern over at FanDuel. Penn State is a heavy favorite. 22.5 points on the spread, minus 2,300 on the money line, plus 1,060 if you're thinking Northwestern. The total sits at 47.5. If you like those lines, you can bet them over at FanDuel or the FanDuel app. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. So now where do things stand with James Franklin himself? Because I think he's still going to be at Penn State in 2026. Because the fans can put pressure. There's a lot of disgruntled fans, a lot of exhausted fans at this point in time. So you can make your presence known by, attendance goes down. I don't know if you're going to purchase any merchandise anytime soon, but that at least lets the administration know what's going on. It's really, the powers that be. Where does Pat Kraft stand? Where do the board of trustees, the donors that really support this program financially, and if all of them are out on James Franklin, then that's obviously where a change is going to be made. But with a $56 million buyout, And then it's not only that. See, this is the part of the conversation that's been pointed out to me, is that it's not just his buyout. It's Jim Knowles' buyout. It's Andy Kotelnicki's buyout. It's all the assistants' buyouts that you are now responsible for if you let James Franklin and this entire staff go with him. And I don't even think that's going to be the case, because the only way that Franklin leaves Penn State is if he wants to on his own terms. And here's another part of this. The worse that Penn State does, the more likely that he's going to stay. Because why would he want to leave a job where he has stability, where he has all the financial incentives in his favor, because is he really, people say, oh, go to Virginia Tech. Why would he take a step backwards? Why would he take a pay cut? Why would he take a resource cut? Why would he take a job stability cut when they let his guy, Brent Pry, go after a few years? Why would Franklin give all of his stability up to go take a demotion?
Yeah, maybe Ira Lubert or BJ Wurzen or one of these big time boosters can maybe throw a couple million on Northwestern money line Saturday. I know Penn State's unthinkably a 21.5-point favorite. Maybe, multiply your dollars a little bit, and then we can afford this buyout. Zach, for me, we're at the point of no return. Yeah, I'll admit it. I am going to make 2 losses over the last 12 years of the growth, or whatever he said of this program, because the loss was to UCLA, which was the worst loss of your career as a coach. I think it's fair for Penn State fans to make 2 losses. He generalizes, right? Like it's 2 losses. It's not just 2 losses. We were okay after the Oregon game. I defended James Franklin after that game. I defended I was sort of out on Drew after the Oregon game, but I didn't think it was time to fire James Franklin after we lost to Oregon, as the rest of the stadium chanted that. Now I'm out. Now you're starting to lose the people who defended you, right? Because it's not just a general loss. So yeah, I don't know. I think we've peaked in this Franklin era, like I said before, with 2016 and 2024. Just listening to some of the stuff, in the press conference, I personally think James Franklin would have been better off coming into the press conference, sitting down. Greg Kincaid does his, okay, coach, make your opening statement. He says, it's my fault. Every second we spend talking is less time we spend getting better and fixing this.
Precisely.
I'm sorry. I'm not taking questions today. We got to be better, and we're going to work right now. If he does that, he does that and walks out, because you're in a lose-lose position. Nothing you say is going to make anything better. So you're obligated to be there. I get it. I get it. It's part of the gig. So you go in, you make a statement, you leave. You don't take questions.
Yeah, you don't have to. And with where everything is, I'm not against that. People were saying, because I said the same thing in a few different posts on X, alluding to that. I'm looking for him to be stern. I'm looking for him to be direct. I'm not, oh, you want him to throw Gatorade bottles? No. But I want him to be that, like, this is no nonsense. We are going to work, and I'm tired of being shamed here. Shame's supposed to motivate you, and I felt like everything was status quo. The guy looked defeated. Like, man, I don't know that we can save this season. Technically, you can. Mathematically, you can. So I want to see that from you. Because it seems like, based on that press conference, we're all assuming the same thing. I don't think you can beat Ohio State. I don't think you can beat Indiana at this point. And the way that Franklin addressed the media on Monday leads me to believe he thinks so too, subconsciously.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and answer Mike Portman's question to Drew in the tunnel there after the game. No, you're not in the playoff hunt anymore. It doesn't take a rocket scientist or even an American Eagle model to know you don't belong in the playoff hunt right now. And I didn't like the attitude there from Drew. I know a lot of people are burying Mike Portman for that. It was a fair question. They can't beat Ohio State. Last week it was all about, oh, well, let's figure out how we can get there. And, maybe we can take another loss, be 10-2. And people completely overlooked UCLA. I'm guilty of it too. Who wouldn't? And here we are in this position, and it's the same thing. He comes in the press conference. We want to thank everybody for being here. We lost this battle.
Status quo, yeah.
We lost, like I said before, we lost the brain cell battle at this point. We're being outsmarted by kids who look like Sunshine Ronnie Bass from Remember the Titans. Zach, I'm really at a loss for words, and a lot. I know this, like, episode's maybe going off the rails a little bit, but honestly, this is the same way I would say it to somebody on the phone, somebody on the street. Like, I think we're all
it's authentic.
in it, right? We're trying to muster up a little bit of something to tell you otherwise, and there's just no place you can turn. I love what Josh Pate said about the guardrails the other night, about how if Penn State swerved off the road a little bit before, there was always a guardrail to stop them because you knew they'd get back on track. Last couple of years, they avoided that second loss that was victimized in the early Franklin era where we did it all the time. They finally fixed that, and they started rebounding from losses. They started looking more like those Nick Saban teams who used to come back and bounce back tough from a loss. Now we're back. We've regressed. We let one loss turn into two. We've done the Franklin
and of all teams, if this is Washington or USC, then I reason with the road trip. I reason with the travel. I reason with losing Tony Rojas against Damon Williams and Jaden Mayava. But but Nico Iamaleava is still a really good quarterback, but it's the makeshift UCLA staff. It's an offensive coordinator that has been 5 days on the job and 48 hours to put a game plan together. That's where the frustration lies, because I can reason with, traveling all the way across the country after a demoralizing Oregon loss is already tough as it is, but that shouldn't be enough to lose to UCLA right now, right? That was the premise of my preview episode, and look, it actually happened the way that it did. So that's why everybody is frustrated. That's why everybody is exhausted, because this is completely new territory. It's not losing to Ohio State and then a ranked Michigan State team afterwards. It's losing to Oregon and then the worst FBS team in college football. So where things stand with James Franklin is the seat is on fire, but he holds all of the cards. And I think he's kind of apathetic at this point because I don't know if I can get to the CFP. Everybody is against me for the most part. What's the point? And it's like, if you want to prove them wrong, here's your chance. But I don't. Again, it's the sense of we're defeated before we actually are. If they had lost, if this was after a third loss, I don't think it's acceptable, but it's understandable. However, you can win out. You can make the college football playoff, but they're not acting like it.
Yeah, and he continues to say, 99% of programs wish they were Penn State, and a team that won the national championship last year was a 2-loss team. It's right. None of that is true. Like, none of that you can, like, it's not even worth saying at this point.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's, Drew questioning his ability to lead this team, if it's, some of the expectations that went around. I mean, and, Franklin's guilty himself with some of that rat poison. Like, you could say all you want. It was the media and it was the fans, and it was. But Franklin's the one who ultimately sat up there at Big Ten Media Days and said it was the best personnel group and coaching staff he's ever had. So it was a great question to open up that post-game presser with, that, whoever asked that about, do you still think this is the best group? And he couldn't answer that. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm out on James Franklin, and I promise that's not an overreaction. I've stood by this guy. I've defended him time and time again. We look back to games like 2018 App State when you were able to sneak out. Fans are okay with that.
Bowling Green.
Miles Sanders was still on the cover of Sports Illustrated after that. You think about USC last year, you sneak out, okay with that. Minnesota last year, you sneak out, okay with that. Wisconsin last year, you sneak out, we're okay with that. Here's the difference. Had Penn State beat UCLA, even if they won in overtime or had gone for 2 or won by 1 point, we'd still be sitting here talking about the same stuff. I don't think our fan base would have been happy. I think we still would have been like, are we going to beat Northwestern? Can we compete with Ohio State? So that's when it's bad. When not even a win could really fix the issues here, because the issues are much larger than the results.
Well, James Franklin, despite all of this, for the most part, has job security again because his agent is really good at his job. But if Penn State and James Franklin happen to part ways, if that's Penn State finds the money for a buyout, or Franklin says, you know what, I'm going to abandon ship and go to another program because another job that's comparable happens to open up. A Florida, maybe they move on from Billy Napier, and I could see Franklin easily wanting that job, but who would Penn State get? And we'll talk about Franklin's situation further if he were to leave Penn State. That's coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply just move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIH Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how we craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard and every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail. Because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda. Move and be moved. And this episode is brought to you by Quo. One of the tools that help make a huge difference for business owners is Quo, formerly Open Phone. It's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, but just with a new name. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or computer, so no more carrying two phones or relying on a landline. You'll love how Quo, formerly known as Open Phone, lets your team share one number and collaborate on calls and texts, like a shared inbox, so no customer gets left behind. Their built-in AI agent is a game changer. It can answer after-hours calls, capture leads, and keep business moving even when you're off the clock. So see why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly Open Phone. Get started for free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That is quo.com/lockedoncollege. And if you got an existing number with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. So potential replacements, here's what I'll say about the head coaching spot itself, because the conversation's always been, well, you can't do better than James Franklin. And it is tough. I will be honest. I see that as, hey, is that true? Is that not true? At least in the immediate future, it's going to be an uphill battle. But it's not the 5-6 year plan that you used to need before 2021. Curt Cignetti is not the standard. He's the exception, but he proves that you don't need 5-6 years to rebuild a program because you can only do high school recruiting. The transfer portal, Penn State has a much stronger NIL situation. I imagine if you get a consensus approved head coaching candidate, that there won't be this reluctance from a portion of the donor base to support the new guy. And I'm not even saying it needs to be a disciple of Paterno per se, but I'm just saying that the donor, because James Franklin has not been the favorite since he stepped in Happy Valley. That is an honest fact. But if you can get everybody to mobilize in favor of the new guy, then Penn State's turnaround would be there wouldn't be as much of a drop off. And then you could see them back at the top in 2 to 3 seasons as opposed to 5 or 6. So there's what I'll say about that. As far as actual potential replacements, I personally like Will Stein a ton. And that's probably me being so disappointed with the quarterback play, whether that's Drew Aller and Sean Clifford or just basically everybody after Trace McSorley. Will Stein seems to be a QB whisperer. Between Dylan Gabriel and now Dante Moore, he hasn't been a head coach, but I just think being around Dan Lanning and running the show offensively at Oregon gives you a lot of credence. I know people suggest Kenny Dillingham. Can you get a Curt Cignetti from Indiana? Those are going to be the main names that you hear. But if you want my personal favorite, I'm willing to take the chance that Will Stein, give him that time. And then you're looking for the next Dan Lanning, right? There he is, the guy who's worked under Dan Lanning.
Yeah, how about Tim Skipper? Or old Jerry Neuheisel there. They might be worthy now, but
they're value additions because they don't make $3 million.
On the real here, I guess you really have to ask yourself 2 questions when it comes to before you start talking about who you want as a candidate and who would fit. Number one being, are you okay with being 5-7, possibly 4-8, mediocre the next couple of years as we rebuild this program? Or would you rather stick it out with Franklin, hit the ceiling, hit 10-2 as your ceiling, and then never get the big one? Obviously, if you're okay with those seasons where we're right there, but not quite over the hump, then you want James Franklin. If you're okay with firing James Franklin, then you got to also be okay with going 4-8, 5-7 for 2 or 3 years.
But that's not a guarantee. Right. That's the thing with the portal and with mobilized NIL.
I get that. Yeah.
You're not, again, Curt Cignetti's not the standard, but you could be back in a winning position in year 3 as opposed to year 5 or year 6.
Yeah. And I guess I probably don't understand. So I'm probably talking out of the wrong end of my mouth here, but if we were to buy Franklin out for $56 million, doesn't that maybe take a hit on portal and NIL? Yeah. So I don't know if it does. If it's private money or something, what I mean? I don't know how that works. I'm not a financial guy, but yeah, that's what I always thought about. Is like, okay, that's the investment that you make, and then you spend all of your NIL dollars.
It's definitely not going to help the next. It's definitely not going to help the next coaching regime. Let's just say that if you buy Franklin out.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I look at that, which let me say, I'm totally okay. I'm completely fine with being, Penn State had its dark years, and, this kind of similar thing happened in 1999 where they came in number 1 and then they choked the season away. Then they were bad for a couple of years. And then obviously 2005, they came back, and that was the same coaching staff. But yeah, you really have to ask yourself that first, is like, what are you okay with, a couple of rough years? I would say another question you have to ask yourself as a Penn State fan is success with honor. How much do you care? Because James Franklin fits that mold as far as like doing things the right way, not cutting corners. I mean, we know even before NIL, James Franklin was not paying players, and Ohio State, Alabama, Michigan, Georgia, they were finding a way to get money to guys. We all know that. It's no secret across the board in the SEC, and I think Ohio State was doing it as well with Urban Meyer. So are you okay with stepping outside of maybe someone who doesn't fit? Lane Kiffin, Will Stein. I'm still of the belief where I'm a little bit of both. I'm okay with firing Franklin, knowing we're going to be in the dumps for maybe 2 or 3 years while we rebuild, and it's more about the long term. But I also want somebody who kind of fits the Penn State way.
People that would want a Matt Rule, I think, are justified. I think people that would suggest Al Golden are justified. Those aren't my ideal candidates, but I get the people that say, hey, if you want a Paterno disciple, Al Golden he's back in the NFL, but he showed at Notre Dame, hey, really good defense, and he has the head coaching experience. The risk that I'm willing to take to find the next Dan Lanning, so to speak, is a risky move for a brand like Penn State, but Oregon did it. So Oregon did it. Why not try it with Will Stein? I think that's a risk that I'd be willing to take when I've just seen nothing but success. Right? And again, quarterbacks are so important in this sport. Will Stein, just for whatever reason, just knows how to work with any and every different quarterback. He's able to unlock the full potential of Dante Moore, turn Dylan Gabriel from a good college football quarterback to, hey, this guy can be taken on day 2 or day 3 in the NFL draft and be a starter for you, be a serviceable backup for you in the NFL. Cleveland Browns are different, but he still helped him get to that point. I think it's worth the risk. Curt Cignetti's obviously a home run hire. I don't mind the idea of a Pat Fitzgerald. I'm trying to think of some other names. Jeff Brom he won at Purdue and now he's down at Louisville. Kenny Dillingham's a popular name, but these guys are also linked to their universities that they're at. For example, right. Dillingham is an Arizona State grad. Is Penn State going to be... Objectively, I would like to think they're appealing enough, but I don't know how Kenny Dillingham feels personally. Your slam dunk hires, if you want to take the risk, it's Will Stein. If you want to take a more conservative approach, but you're still getting a slam dunk with a high potential, it's Kenny Dillingham. Those are the top 2 in my mind.
Yeah, like a Will Stein. Like we know, and I appreciate that James Franklin has gone about his business a certain way with integrity, like we talk about the success with honor, and
I
also
agree.
being self-aware of knowing where this program came from and that there's a certain standard to uphold about how you carry yourself. And it's more than just wins or losses. And then you see the flip side of that. You see Dan Lanning in the tunnel, yelling at fans, we are about to get our ass kicked. Lanning looking like a man possessed, doing everything he can to get his players fired up. I mean,
And it
did
felt
not
like
matter
Franklin
how he
used to
acted.
have somewhat of an edge like that, but he doesn't anymore.
Yeah, right. And all that's because he always grounds himself with these core values.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just how he is. And I appreciate that he's, he has those values, and all his former players talk about those core values. So they obviously mean something. He's a GM, Zach. He would be perfect. I mean, how many what we've seen, Bruce Arians is going to kind of do that at Virginia Tech. Andrew Luck's doing that at Stanford. North Carolina hired one. I know Penn State probably has like a de facto GM.
They
But
do.
James Franklin would be a great general manager, but he's not a football coach. He's not a head football coach. He's a general manager. We got to find our next head football coach. And me, sitting here wearing this shirt, the Joe Paterno shirt, being the most traditional Penn State person that you could find, even I am willing to go outside of what Penn State would traditionally look for in a coach to get the right guy. And I think about Lane Kiffin. He probably won't leave. You could throw some other names out there in Dillingham, but those guys, maybe they don't fit what Penn State's looking for. Maybe it's time to approach it differently when you find your next head coach.
Well, it'll be interesting to see because at the end of the day, these conversations are interesting. They're going to be entertaining, but are they worth anything when I still think James Franklin's going to be coaching in 2026. So these conversations will definitely continue and take a lot of twists and turns, regardless of whether Penn State's winning or if Penn State's absolutely crashing out and they lose a bunch of games. So we're going to have these conversations, plenty more to talk about.
Can I ask you one more question, Zach, before we go?
Go for it.
If Penn State gets blown out by Ohio State, is he still our head coach in 2026?
Is Penn State able to get the dollars together?
Okay.
It's not even.
So that's more the question. Okay. Yeah.
And if Franklin wants to leave, does he jeopardize his future career to say that? Because again, I don't think he's taking a Virginia Tech job. That is a step down for him.
Well, the UFL has some openings. They just got 3 new teams today: the Columbus Aviators, the Louisville Kings, and the Orlando Storm.
If a Florida opened up, or I don't know, a Brian Kelly and LSU, they part ways, right? Franklin's not going to take a demotion. He needs to want to leave Penn State because like you said, you're like, hey, that's going to impact the next staff and potential NIL dollars and the donors because Penn State, the university, is not going to pay that buyout. It's going to be up to the donors plus the university to do that. So that's where everything stands. We're going to have plenty more conversations about it. An interesting one here with myself, Zach Seyko, your host as always, and Matty Fresh, Matt Freiler, the artiste behind Trace McSorley, Jahan Dotson, and so many other Penn State fan-themed songs. Go check out his work. Links are down in the description. Matt, appreciate the time as always. Appreciate the honesty and the authenticity as well, and can't wait to have you back on the show in the not too distant future.
And don't forget Triple Threat Tyler. We miss you, Ty. Keep killing it in the NFL, baby.